Hey everyone, how you doing? We are back with episode 8 of the Mission Possible Life podcast. And this episode is called Forgiveness is the Solution. And it came to light that this episode should be made from a conversation that I had with someone that is important to me, somebody that I work with, somebody that has been a true champion of my experiences and has shared how the experience, the way I articulate and the way that I share my story has not only benefited, but is important. It's a reminder that we all have a story to tell. And when we remember we are the authors of our story, that you never know who or how you're going to impact another individual. And it's funny that I actually even begin and start to say, you never know who or how you will impact other people. Because the truth is, I couldn't comprehend that until I learned about the power of forgiveness. I was somebody that was always stuck in a state of victimhood, which made it impossible for me to take ownership of my choices, how my choices impacted others, regardless of the intent behind those choices. Because I'm someone that always believed that I made choices from a place of my absolute center. And the reality of that that's skewed perspective, because a lot of my choices, until I found recovery, until I found my healing journey, until I found the values that really highlight my life, integrity, love, and compassion, until I learned those values, my choices were always geared towards protecting my ego, protecting myself, protecting my image, allowing me to be what you needed me to be. So I felt okay. It was safer to be a chameleon at all times in my life. And where did I learn forgiveness? The truth is I learned forgiveness in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm somebody that has been on a recovery journey, former heroin addict, struggled with drugs, sold drugs, but it wouldn't be until I started to practice a program of recovery from the 12-step perspective that I would learn about forgiveness. And in that program, it's called an amends process. And I actually like that, because I still feel at times forgiveness is that I bumped somebody on the street and I'm like, oh, my bad, right? That's a quick aspect of forgiveness. For me, the difference between forgiveness and the amends process is the connection with the action and the conscious effort not to recreate that action for anybody else. And like, look, it's very different when bumping into someone. It's an accident, and there can be a quick, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And I do believe there's a level of truth behind my bad or I'm sorry. But for me, as somebody that's still engaging in their own healing process and wanting to strengthen and broaden my awareness, I needed the amends process, because the amends process allowed me space to hear how my choices impacted other people, again, regardless of the intent. It's funny, you want the solutions, and we want the quick fixes, we want the silver bullet, the instant gratification, and that's not what an amends process is. It's long, it's arduous, it's drawn out. It can feel like uphill battle. Many people in AA and 12-step programs, when it comes to that fourth step, which is just literally, it is just a personal reflection of how things have went down in your life, and a lot of us stop there. And then the next aspect of it is to read it to somebody else, and we still haven't even gotten to the place where you're going to go set up a time and place to meet the individual that you may have transgression or may have committed transgressions against you, and sit down and talk it out, and allow them the space to share how they experienced you. There's a whole line of things that are going to happen if you're true to the amends process, but it is a step-by-step process. It's not something that you're going to figure out all in day one. And by having this, what I've learned, and the beauty of 12-step and AA work, is there's these little healthy reminders in the steps after you go through this long, drawn out process. And it doesn't have to be drawn out depending on who you're working with, right? There's some sponsors that want to take you as quick as possible through your steps so you can start to be there to get into the service work and start to connect with some of the spiritual principles that help many of us navigate and find a connection to the world around us. Because the truth is, the world's not going to change. The world is not going to change. It's not going to get easier, but in my personal belief is, as we continue to grow, we just continue to get better. And I talked about this a little bit in the episode, when mental walls become physical ones, especially in the family aspect, with me and my father, when he was the one who really showed me and made it easier for me to start to engage with the 12-step work, which I was resistant with. I had experience in the past, but a lot of that was the judge nudge, getting caught up in court and having to go get all these signatures, and then you realize it's an anonymous program. You could, if you got great penmanship like me, you can make up some names and create your own signatures in an anonymous group. But that was a state of victimhood, right? Taking care of my ego without having to do the work. And I'll tell you this, from what I learned about just finding forgiveness, there is no easy path to it. And I'm not somebody that you hear the thing like, it's easy to forgive, but it's hard to forget. I'm somebody that believes in that. I don't think you should forget. God gave me my understanding of God. I have a conscious mind to remember things. So it's not that I would never leave space for you to engage in your own amends or forgiveness work, but the greatest lesson that actually happened with me through my amends work with people was when I went to ask for forgiveness from somebody that was like a brother to me when I was growing up. This individual would let me stay at their house. I stayed with their family. They took care of me when my older brother was dealing with his stuff, and I felt like I needed to make myself small inside my own house. Like, this was the family that I would go to. These are the people that I would surround myself by. And my addiction and my way of living didn't mesh up with his, and we split ways. And when I finally realized, like, I needed to learn from that experience, it was not an easy process. The process and the work happened with trying to find my part, seeing how it interrupted different areas of my life. And in 12 step, it's like your security. Did it impact your personal relationships? And there's many different areas. Now I've utilized what they have given me, but I operationalize it from the perspective or the vantage point of my experiences. I look at what is the emotional impact of this riff or this transgression that I either engaged in or somebody else engaged in with me. What is the physical? What is the mental strain? Is there financial strain? Right? And when you can evaluate how an experience has maybe shifted or changed who you are, then you are more clear on. For me, it became easier to become clear on who I am, and am I still showing up with the things that are important to me? Am I still making choices regardless of bad things happening to me from that place, which is my core, right? My intrinsic value, my core values of life. That the three words that I say define me at all times is integrity, love, and compassion. When I was actually sitting down with this individual, what I found out is I shared my understanding of the experience, and then I just asked him if he's willing to share his with me. And it was one of the most powerful experiences that I actually ever went through. And it was powerful to say, just because it wasn't what I thought was going to happen for the most part. I thought I did a lot of the heavy amends work with the people in my life. My family, of course, was not quick to forgive me, but remind me that I was more than my addiction and the things that were going on during my trauma and the pain that I experienced. But this was one that actually really helped me become very clear that I wanted change in my life. And the thing that happened while we were having the conversation is he shared with me, like, look, I respect that is who you are and the things that were going on. He was keenly aware of my home life and the things that were going on in the household, and keenly aware of my addiction. And he's like, look, man, I'll always have love for you, but I just don't have time for you anymore. I don't have time for people that I have kids now, I have family, I have different priorities, and I just don't have time for someone that can be in and out. And actually respected, even though that hurt. There was this juvenile idea that you say sorry and everything's supposed to go back to the way that I think it should be. And what the amends does is it teaches you the impact. And once you understand the impact, that you can start to become accountable. And that's what I learned that day. I learned how to be accountable to creating a rift in somebody that I grew up with that was like a brother to me. When we were out in my teenage and my younger years, like this was somebody that was literally considered a brother to me. And he asked me to, he wished me the best in my life, but he also asked me to just let things be as they have been. Because it was years between us really sitting with one another and understand. Like at that point when we sat down, I had no clue. I had an understanding because of social media. You could see things that are going on in people's lives, but I didn't know who he was. It was over a decade of distance between us, and I didn't put in the work to maintain that relationship. What I learned through the amends process is that it's more important to what happens after, right? What happens after we experience pain? What happens after we experience a transgression? Because what I did know for the longest time of my life, all that things that happened to me, they were stored and I carried them with me, and I made you the reason why I couldn't have the life that I wanted. I gave everybody else the agency in my life, and they became the exact reason why my life was the way it was instead of taking ownership. I couldn't do that. See, forgiveness, it relieves and diffuses the tension of hatred that started to become created while you're holding on to choices that weren't even yours to be made. Sometimes they are, right? But when things are done to me, that's done by other people. And it was hard to realize I'm not this godlike figure that can make people do what they want to do, and nor do I want to be. I'm very comfortable just being myself today, but that took a long time. And what it took was literally honoring forgiveness is the solution. What forgiveness did for me is it allowed me to let go of everything that was no longer mine to hold on to. And that wasn't an overnight process. That was sitting down, that was having the conversation with my father, that was telling my father all the ugliness of my life, the ins and outs, from the drug dealing to the aggression to the violence to the horrific things I experienced and seen because of my choices. Because at the end of the day, my parents didn't raise me to become the man that I was. I made choices to become that man. With that level of awareness and that level of insight, what I started to realize is I could pull the layer back of who I am today compared to who I was in my past. My past doesn't define me. It defines me if I still am carrying the same level of hatred and pain that I did when I was 3, when I was 10, when I was 15, when I was 18, when I was 20. Then it defines me, because that means I haven't changed at all. And what forgiveness did is allowed me to start to understand the importance of self-love in my life, which removed this veil of hatred and self-hatred that I actually operated in for a majority of my life. The things that I was doing wasn't because I loved myself. It's because I hated myself so much that I needed to bury the thoughts. I needed to bury the memories of. I didn't want to be clear-minded and sit with the reality of who I was up until that moment of my life. And still I found the change process of recovery. And again, it happened in the rooms of AA and 12-step. They were foundational. It gave me the experience of sitting with a buddy of mine or a dear friend or like a brother, and then him asking me again, I wish you the best and I love you, but just go that way. I'm gonna love you from afar because that's how much I love you. And that also became a powerful lesson in what love really is, because I think at times I get confused in these fairy tale ideas. I used to get confused in these fairy tale ideas of love, and what I know in my heart of heart, my love is raw, it's authentic. It at times can be aggressive because it's unconditional for the things that are important to me. For my family, there's nothing I wouldn't do for them because I've seen it done for me. And I try to act that way honestly with strangers in my life, because I know how powerful that display of humanity can be when somebody's just feeling down. Because that was the beginning of change in my own life. It was having the space to navigate the hardship. It was having the space to come and return to and be in a community setting and talk about having a place to reflect after the experience of sitting down with my buddy. Is like, hey, you got to go that way. Was I upset? Yes, yes. But the reflection allowed me to see that he was also removing the burden of carrying any of my shit with him as well. And that's the powerful thing. And that's why I say forgiveness is the solution. It doesn't mean, again, that I'm going to forget, nor should you. I don't believe you should. I don't believe you should, but I do believe, and this, again, this goes back to my personal experiences. I do believe I shouldn't be carrying somebody else with me unless they are important to me. Why would I carry a transgression for 20 years knowing that I can't change that person? But if I'm holding on to the pain that they created, I'm actually holding on to that person. And 9 times out of 10, that person ain't holding on to nothing about you. Hasn't thought about you in 20 years, but I'm still upset about this not happening the way that I thought it should happen. And there's levels to it, right? There are levels of how we can find forgiveness for individuals like me that lived a life of ups and downs and all arounds and not knowing what was straight and hurting people. There are some there the truth is, like, the most important solution with forgiveness is to actually absolutely not be that same man that I or that individual I was when I was in the mud. Don't. And that it didn't come overnight. Again, there's no silver bullet or solution. There's no quick fix to this thing. It happened with in the beginning of learning about forgiveness. A lot of the times I needed to do things so I didn't have to say sorry, because that was a hard place. Like that, I'm sorry when you already feel less than or not seen, or there's a level of otherness between you and the world around you. I'm sorry feels like I'm a sorry piece of shit. And I'll share with you one of the first things that really like helped after learning the structure of and a true apology to me, which is I will always bring this up. I believe a true apology is done in the manner of 12-step work in AA, how they go about the amends process. I believe that is an absolute true apology. And there's different levels to it. There's sitting down with somebody and doing the work. There's living amends. There's financial amends. What do I have to do to pay you back for material means I may have taken from you that wasn't mine to take in the first place? So there's areas of that, and I'll get into that in a second. But there was also the first process that allowed me to get to there, which was trying to find forgiveness for myself. And what that looked like, I came home and I was in a facility, and I was working with a spiritual counselor at the time, and he sat me down. He's like, look, like if your spiritual journey right now is about forgiveness, I challenge you to do a daily and nightly affirmation and just say, I'm sorry. Look in the mirror and apologize to yourself. Can you find that level of forgiveness you're seeking from others? And I didn't understand, because that's the victimhood mentality. I was like, why the hell am I going to sit in front of a mirror and just apologize, say I'm sorry? And I challenged myself for 90 days to do so. And I'll tell you, the first 89 days of that I'm sorry, it's exactly what I said a couple minutes ago. I'm sorry. I'm a sorry piece of shit. I'm a sorry piece of shit. That's all I'm hearing. And all I'm visualizing, the person in the mirror is responding back to me. You're a sorry piece of shit. And on day 89, I think it was on day 90, finally the floodgates opened and I started to see a result of the work. And it was the first time in a long time that I looked at myself and I felt that I'm sorry there was truth behind it, because I started to see and become aware of the actions that aligned with that apology that I was making to myself. I was taking efforts in directions that I never thought. And I'll be honest with you, my sobriety and recovery didn't stand on a lot of principles of being a man of integrity, love, and compassion. I learned that years later. My intention behind getting sober was I gave myself 5 years. And I told myself I can't build a life that I feel I deserve in the next 5 years, and I'm going to go back to the life that I was living. In that 5 years, what I did tell myself is that any suggestion given to me to have a different life, you gotta give it the full experience. What I tend to see, especially with the work with others, is we want to do things for 2 weeks, for a month, and then we give up and we say it doesn't work. I just found out something like mind-boggling when we talk about research. I had a doctor, an addiction specialist doctor, at a conference that I was a part of over the weekend, or last week, or a couple weeks ago, last weekend. I'm a little lost in it. They literally said that research is not even done in a real way. The long-term research is like 6 weeks to 12 weeks, and these are like long-term research. There's just not a lot of the funding, so they do research in 6 weeks and say that this is realistic. And it just, like, again, for the world that I live in, it's like 6 weeks of being sober. It's not even enough time to tell if anything is working in my life, because it's barely enough time to see if I'm clear-minded, and my body's starting to feel back together, and I'm starting to maybe have an inch of awareness. But from the work I've done with others, it's not always there. How do I take these smaller lessons and start to see the fruit of the work? It's by just continuing to show up. And by continuing to show up, I also have to find a moment to be aware of myself enough to see where things are going, what things are going on in my life, right? What things are going on in my life that are wrong. And don't just use yourself. The beautiful thing about being in a world of experience around us, rely on it. We're not species that are supposed to be doing things by ourselves. I know there are some of you out there that have been grinding and figuring out life by yourself for a long time. And I'll tell you, I was one of those people, and I'm tired. I'm tired of thinking that I have to be the one to figure out everything for myself. I will tell you this, though. You have exactly what you need within you to have success in your life. As long as you're defining your success from your own metric system and not using someone else's yardstick to measure your success, you'll be good. Stop looking at what other people have and think that it is more important than what you have as yourself. Because when you start to find gratitude for the smaller things, that's when, again, all this stuff works together. Forgiveness allows me to be grateful for the things that I have, because I appreciate the smallest things in my life, from the chair that I'm sitting in to waking up and breathing this morning. This is, again, just forgiveness is the solution, and it will be, and it can be. And I ask you, if you don't have a 12-step background, to just look at the steps and go over them, and not even go over them. The way that you can break down just the fourth step as an evaluation for yourself. You could do a couple columns. The first questions you start to answer is, what is the experience? Like, what happened? What happened during this experience, right? Who was impacted? And it's okay to say you were impacted, but be conscious that you're not the only thing, or you're not the only person in the universe. So your choices impacted others. How are they impacted? Get very clear on that. Also, how are you impacted? Get very clear on that. And you could break it down, again, from what you're aware of, but I would break it down from, how does it impact you spiritually in your relationship to others? How does it impact you socially and how you connect with others? How does it impact you mentally? Is there mental strain and stress because of these choices? How has it impacted you financially? How has it impacted your emotional well-being? And the last part that I think is most important, what was your role in that experience? And this can be an evaluation place that, like, what we learn in our 4 steps. I explored it a little bit different, but this is what we can learn. And then the next step is take a risk and start to share that information. And the road to humility is through embarrassment. And what do I mean by that? When you can get comfortable with those embarrassing moments, or these moments that you might feel are embarrassing, you will start to become humbled by them. And being humbled by your choices is huge for growth. Because once I learned that there was no gun to my head, I can start to become aware of how and why I'm making the choices that I'm making. And then eventually it gets to a place of sitting down with some of the other people. when it's right to do so. There's things in my past that I didn't have a means of being able to sit down with some of the people. Guess what I get to do? I get to show up, and it's the reason I show up the way I show up. It's because I know I've hurt people and taken from people. Now I just try to give back. There's a place where I can't make the financial. I'm actually gotta at the end of this episode, I gotta send a Zelle to somebody because I made my wording remind me of it. I forgot. It's easy to forget, but when someone reminds you of the things that you said you would do, it's important to pay it. It's important to take care of it. Don't allow your words to become sand and limestone, concrete and iron. Do what you say. It's more important to be an example of your values and try to convince other people through the way that you're talking. So if this has resonated in the least bit with any of you guys, you know where to find me. I put out daily motivation and inspiration on Instagram. If you connect with anything you hear here or would like to explore forgiveness in your own journey and how it can help you, please reach out for a free consultation on my website, themissionpossiblelife.com. I'm here to support you in your journey. I want to see you do well. I think the most important thing for me is to always remind people that you are a blessing for no other reason than you were born. And the blessing I want to give each and every one of you today is, I know if you take any of what was said today and apply it to your life, you can see a result of that. My blessing for each and every individual today is for them to be open-minded enough to hear new information and adjust some of the truths that may be tripping them up in life. And if nobody told you today, from the bottom of my heart, I sincerely love each and every one of you. This is Jeremy Poole with another episode. I know this is going to find the ones that need to hear it, and I'll be waiting to connect with the others when you appear. Sending lots of love today. All right, I'm out.